I'm Brandon Smith, and I'm the workplace therapist. My entire purpose and passion in life is one singular thing, and that's to help you live a life free from dysfunction. And let's be honest, folks, dysfunction is everywhere. Our bosses, our coworkers, our neighbors, even that grumpy barista that pours your coffee. And sometimes, that dysfunction stares back at us in the face when we're getting ready in the mornings and we see ourselves in the mirror. Well, at the end of the day, life and work should not have to suck. The purpose of this show is to help you overcome those roadblocks in your life to help you realize the life you've always wanted. This is the Brandon Smith Show, and I'm your host, Brandon Smith. And the entire purpose of this show is one singular thing, and that is to help you live a life just that much better and a little more free from dysfunction. So for today's show, we are taking on a very interesting and very relevant topic to us as leaders. We're going to be talking about, should you play politics? And so today's show is going to be a little bit different than some of our other shows in that I have got my fantastic social media guru joining us today, Whitney.
Thank you.
Whitney Mendoza.
That was a nice introduction.
Well, you totally deserve that introduction.
Thank you.
So we're going to be doing a little bit of a leadership therapy, and Whitney and I are going to chat about one of these topics, and she's going to ask me some questions and see how I might be able to help us as managers and leaders today, talking about playing politics. And then the second half of the show, we're going to take on a question from you as listeners and viewers. And so see what you have asked me and how we might be able to help you solve that. So, Whitney, let's talk about this whole politics thing.
It's so touchy, and it happens, I would say, in every workplace. Do you think, Brandon?
Yes, I would say so.
Small, big.
Yeah, yes, I think that's a really important point. I think naturally it plays a part in all workplaces, even the ones that say we don't have politics here. They still have some level of it. However, my experience has been that as soon as a organization, typically a company, but you can use other numbers for other kinds of organizations, when a company hits 3 billion with a B, B is in Brandon, 3 billion in revenue, they cease to become a company and they morph into a government.
Wow.
So all of you who are listening right now, who are sitting and going, maybe you're commuting to work and you're about to go to work for a company that's over 3 billion in revenue, you're working for a government. And once people, and it's not meant to be a derogatory statement, it's just what happens. It cuts across cultures, it cuts across countries, industries. When you get that many people together, then those political machinations start to take place. People start vying for power. I always say, you get over 3 billion in revenue, you'll start to find people that have big titles and no one knows exactly what they do, but they make a lot of money and have a big title. They go around, shake a lot of hands, kiss a lot of babies. It's kind of the thing.
Wow.
So it's much more prevalent in big companies, but it's true in all environments.
So let's dive into that a little bit. Tell me, what do you mean by they're a government? What does that look like?
Yeah, I should probably clarify that a little bit more. So when we think about government, and again, you may be going to work for a government, and that's perfectly fine. You're going to have politics there as well. And so when you've got those kinds of dynamics, then people are going to be very protective of their turf and protective of their particular kind of stakes that they have. And so you're going to have a little more lobbying, a little more politicking, a little more alliances. A lot of the things that we see in politics is going to happen in those workplaces. So people are going to kind of form secret alliances and kind of form groups that kind of go and lobby for certain initiatives. And so it becomes not solely not about performance. Performance is still there, but it becomes almost equally performance as well as kind of who you know. So we often talk about it's what you know, it's also who you know. This is kind of both.
So how can we as leaders, because I'm afraid a lot of times maybe even if they don't know it, leaders foster that. How can we as leaders kind of remain, free territory?
You're trying to say, how do we avoid it?
Yes.
Oh, you can't. You can't avoid it. No, you can't avoid it. The dream is over. The dream, Whitney, is over.
My heart is broken.
The dream is over. As you move up the ranks, A simple back of the envelope way to look at it is for every level you move up, starting at kind of the manager or senior manager level, as soon as you move up beyond that level, 10% of your time should be dedicated more towards communicating and managing politics and not towards doing work.
Wow. Okay.
So you become a director, that's 10% more time that you should be doing done that way. Go up to VP or SVP, 10 more percent. So that becomes challenging for doers because they move up the ranks and they just keep doing,
Mm-hmm.
but politics begins to eat them alive. They're not playing the games. They're not building the right alliances. They're not looping in the right stakeholders. And it costs them. It costs them opportunities.
So if we can't not have it, can we manage it?
You can manage it, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So how do we do that?
There's good news in this.
Okay.
So playing politics doesn't, it sounds like it's a horrible, nasty, awful word. It doesn't have to be. What it essentially is we're just trying to play nice in the sandbox and bring as many people along as possible. Now, the other part that also feels unnatural in this is that it requires you have to slow down to do this effectively. Because as I said, you've got to bring a lot more people along.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to spend more time reaching out to people and thinking about that. So I'll give you a good example of this, make it a little more concrete. I had a client of mine a couple of years ago, and he worked for a company in more of the financial services space. And he was kind of this super competent, really smart guy, hard-charging guy. And as I was doing his 360 interviews, one of the people I interviewed came from a strategy consulting firm. He was a former consultant.
Okay.
And so he was really good at this because consultants learn they've got to play politics in organizations to kind of get stuff done. And the feedback that he gave me to pass on to my client was this. He said, this individual needs to identify maybe the 6 to 9 key stakeholders inside the organization that are really, really important to his success and put it on his calendar every quarter to reach out to them and just check in. Just say, hey, what's going on and what's going on in your world and what can I be doing to help and support you better? And so it's those little things that allow us to kind of bring people along, have them more connected to us, and allow us to manage the political environment a little bit more.
Wow, that's really tough though.
Yeah, it's very tough.
It feels like situations can kind of get sticky.
It can, and I will say sometimes, and this happens for all of us in our careers, particularly if you're moving up and you're getting shiny opportunities, people that you thought were allies may all of a sudden flip and become political adversaries because you got something that she didn't get or he didn't get. So it can also surprise you. Sometimes people you thought were good all of a sudden aren't, and then you've got to go back and do damage control.
Wow. So is there a way we can manage that then if we're the leader, that we can manage that if we see that taking place amongst our employees? So there's maybe cliques forming, they have maybe their own little mini governments inside. What can we do about that as a leader?
So as a leader, it's a lot easier to break down politics inside your own organization because what you can basically do is mandate that people do healthy activities. And what I mean by healthy activities is you mandate that all your direct reports have lunch with each other at least once a month. So let's say you have 5 direct reports, that's 5 lunches. Each person needs to have, or 4 lunches, because each person needs to have lunch with one of the other people just to get more connected so they're not siloing. So siloing is also another form of politics, right? And we often talk about silos, because silos is a form of political play. I only care about my area. I don't care about your area, and I'm not going to let you have stuff or do stuff that affects my area. So you can break those down much easier as a leader, and you can set expectations as a leader. But when you're in it, and you're dealing with forces above you, it's a lot harder. It just requires a lot of intentionality.
So does the game change if you're an employee but you're looking to move up among the ranks to become a manager or maybe move into the corner office?
Yes. So here's another good acronym. I've often heard that, I've seen this acronym before describing kind of how we move in our career. It's PIE, just like pie that you eat.
Okay.
And it stands for P is performance, I is for image, E is for exposure.
Okay.
And so that's a nice formula for how you made your career. It's about performance in the beginning, all about getting the job done. But your image matters. So if you're, and that's part of playing politics, making sure you fit in to the right image of the place you work. What does that look like? Is it, jeans and relaxed shirts, or is it formal? What's the attire? And then exposure. Are you getting in front of the right people? And so that's a way to think about it. If I want to move up the ranks, I got to make sure I'm delivering. I look the part, and I'm figuring out a way. In the luxury retail world, they call it platforming. I'm getting platformed in front of my boss or my boss's boss or my boss's boss's boss. And so looking for those opportunities. And that is playing politics.
Wow. So I'm interested in that. How do you get in front of the right people? How do you know that you're getting in front of the right people? What are some steps and tactics that they can do to move up the ranks in that way?
It starts with your boss. So you start with your boss, and you start with her or him, and you say, it's really important to me that I support you well, and I would love to get development opportunities. Is there any opportunities to present in senior meetings would be great. So you ask for those opportunities, and they may do that for you. The other thing that's also important in this, and this is where politics can come into play as well. In a perfect world, you'd be having conversations with your boss's boss, right? You'd form a relationship there, and you'd get them to mentor you. So once or twice a year, you ask them for coffee and say, hey, I'd love to learn more about what you look for and what matters to you. Here's what gets tricky. Some bosses don't like you talking to their boss. So you've got to be really careful. You either got to ask your boss for permission and see if she or he will allow you, or you take the gamble and you do it undercover and pretend like you didn't know that they might not like it.
So why is that? You think your boss is maybe afraid that you're trying to come after their job?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Bosses can be very, particularly if they're in vulnerable positions in their life.
Okay.
So let's say they're a boss, male or female, and they've got a growing family, or they're having a lot of family pressure at home, or they're not at work as much. I found those bosses to be more defensive and more reluctant to let direct reports reach out to their boss.
Interesting.
For fear that they'll usurp. Is it usurp them? Usurp them? I think that's the right word.
Yes.
I think
so.
I think you get it. Isaac can correct us.
Yes. Put it down at the bottom. Correct us. Well, it's interesting because it sounds like that's kind of where that territorial feeling kind of comes back around, that, well, this is my space. I'm your boss. Why do you need to speak with my boss?
Exactly.
Wow.
But while that makes sense, the but is that limits your ability to get exposure. And remember, if we go back to that acronym of PI, well, we need that level of exposure. So I think what we've been talking about here is really two-parter. If you're an employee, how do you get exposure, image, performance to kind of move up? But if you're a boss and leader, how do you think about all those other key stakeholders who are peers and other senior leaders? And how are you very intentional about putting them on your calendar quarterly to reach out and touch base with them and say, hey, okay, what's on your mind? Here's what's on my mind. To keep those connections strong, those political allies on your side and not adversaries. We don't want them to switch to adversaries. That can be a big, big challenge. Yeah. So this was awesome. I love this topic. We could go on, but I know we're getting close to a break. So let's take a break.
Okay.
And
Let's do.
When we come back, we are going to take on a listener's question. And I know you've got one prepared. I don't know which one it is, but she's going to surprise me. So we're going to take it on. Stay tuned. And when we come back, we'll take on your question, and then we'll see how we can make your life just a little less dysfunctional.
Job plus the right culture plus the right boss equals workplace happiness. The number one reason people leave jobs is problems with their boss. A horrible boss can make us dread every Monday, but an amazing boss can make us so excited to work that we'd go in on weekends. Finding your perfect boss is not only possible, it's one of the most impactful steps you can take in crafting your perfect career. Visit theworkplacetherapist.com and click on guides to learn how to find and get your perfect boss, whether that means making the decision to move on or turning your current boss into the perfect leader you want them to be. Our bosses have so much influence over our work and our whole day. Working for the right boss alone can be a winning career strategy.
Welcome back to the Brandon Smith Show. I am your host, Brandon Smith. And today, if you're just joining us, Whitney, hello.
How are you?
You didn't expect
Welcome
me
back
to do that.
from the break.
I jumped right back. And we have been talking, earlier we were talking about politics, and Whitney posed the question to me, and we were talking about how do we navigate politics as managers and leaders. It was one of our mini segments on leadership therapy. Now we're taking on questions from listeners. So Whitney, it looks like you've got one teed up for me.
I do. This show has kind of been a little bit serious and a little bit sticky. So this question, I really feel for the reader that sent this in. They say, I'm hoping you can help me get through my emotional paralysis of an elective job change that has led me down the road of fear and failure. I left a Fortune 500 company where I'd been a top producer in sales to take a management position with a small company in the same industry. It was not a good fit, to say the least. I have since moved on and currently surviving but not thriving. I need help moving forward but not sure how to begin.
Awesome. That does sound kind of heavy.
It is.
I will say this. I want to give this listener a ton of grace because this happens to us in our careers all the time. We're in an environment, we maybe feel stuck, and we say, I want something different.
Mm-hmm.
And something new comes along.
And for her, it sounds like a management position. So it felt like a move up, even though it was a smaller company.
Exactly. So maybe
she's manager now.
She went from kind of a sales role to say, oh my gosh, I'm a vice president. Because often when you go to a smaller company, the title jump is much higher.
Right.
You go from a big company where you were director, you go to a smaller company, you're senior vice president or something like that. So she gets this great title. Small company, probably felt like more of a family environment, loved it. On the surface, gets in there, and then after a while says, this is just not a good fit. And who knows, it could have been a number of factors.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about what those factors could have been. So what I'm particularly passionate about and clear on is that every single one of us have the capability, every single one of us, to be rock stars and world changers. If, there's an if to this,
Okay.
if we're in the right context.
Okay.
If we're in the wrong context, we can all be horrible failures. Context matters. Context matters. So I think that's a big important piece of this. She moved to another context, and all of a sudden, it wasn't working for her. So it's really about trying to find that right context.
Wow.
So then the question is, how do we find that right context?
Yes.
Yeah. So, okay, it hit me several years ago that workplace happiness, which is really about context, is really a product of three important pieces. But they're not rocket science. So it's right job. Okay, so the context has to have the right job.
Okay.
And right job I would define as it fits my strengths, passions, and values well. Okay, so it's something I'm good at doing and I enjoy doing it. That's right job. But that's not all. There's two more pieces. Right culture. Right culture means I'm working with people that share the same values as I do. And so they share my values, I share their values, we get along great. And then the third one is often overlooked, but anyone who's experienced a poor version of this knows how important it is. Right boss. Right boss. So the person who either shares or honors my values. So if you have a right job, right culture, right boss, it's like a little rainbow pops up and follows you to work every day, follows you home every day. And most people touch 3 out of 3 in their career. But it's difficult to hold on to because all three of those things are constantly in motion. Cultures change, bosses change, jobs change. So majority of people right now who are listening to this would fall in the category of 2 out of 3. Job, workplace satisfaction. So 2 of those 3 are working, 1's not working. If you ever had 1 out of 3, that's workplace dissatisfaction. You're actively looking to make a move. If you ever have 0 out of 3, okay, wrong job for you, wrong culture, you think everybody's crazy, they think you're crazy too. And your version of kind of nightmare boss, it's like a little bit of your soul dies each and every day. It's a horribly painful experience. So I think for the first starting place for our listener here is to assess both her current context, her current place of work. How does it stack up on that formula? What parts is it? What parts working? What parts not? It sounds like she's at least, at best case scenario, a 1 out of 3, and maybe even worse. And then when she had her whole job, what was that? She had to look back at that. How did it stack up? And see how she can use that information to start to think about what's the next good move.
Wow. So is there a timeline? Is there a formula like, because she sounds like, I want this now. I want to be back
Oh, that's a good
to
question.
happiness.
That's a good question. So I would tell you, if she was a 0 out of 3, okay,
Mhm.
and she might be sugarcoating this a little bit. Maybe she's a 0 out of 3.
Mhm.
Wrong job, wrong culture, wrong boss, and a little bit of her soul is dying each and every day. Quit now. So what you would say, you would hear me say that and say, Brandon, that's a silly, foolish thing to do. You should always look for a job while you have a job. People that are 0 out of 3, trust me, I've worked with them. They are so emotionally beat down that even if they got a job interview, they would show up so horribly that there's no way they would get another job. There needs to be time to recharge. So you almost need to recharge, find yourself, get yourself kind of energized again, passionate again, and then start interviewing. Now, if she's 1 out of 3, then now she needs an exit strategy. And I would probably put that as a 6 to 12 month window.
Okay.
So start to make a plan. So you're not so beat down that you can't move forward, but start to make a plan. And a simple way to do that is to go back and think about those times when you were 3 out of 3, and or those bosses or employees or coworkers that you worked with that you just loved working with, and see where they are working today. Because if they're happy where they're at and you enjoyed working with them, you would probably be happy there too. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Absolutely.
Because if they're happy, it means there's shared values. And if you shared values with them, it's like, oh, well, then if you like it, then I like it. So I often tell folks that are veterans, they come out of the military, I say, go find a company that's got lots of veterans. Because if there's a lot of veterans there, they probably like it. And it means there's going to be a hybrid of values. Some that are a little bit of military, a little bit of corporate kind of mixed in. And you're going to feel more at home versus a place that's got no veterans.
Okay. So let me ask you this. Are there one of those components that's just the most detrimental out of the 3 to be without? So let's say I really love my job. I love what I do. I love all my coworkers, but my boss, I do not like my boss at all. What does that mean for me?
Boss is the most important.
Okay.
Hands down, every day of the week, twice on Sundays, boss is the most important.
Okay.
Because boss controls everything, including the other 2.
So if I like my job and I like my employees, but my boss and I just don't get along, I should be in that phase of maybe looking for something else.
You might need to look for something else.
Okay.
But the good news is, if you're in that first one, if you're in the category you just described, right job, right culture, then look for another opportunity inside the same company.
Okay.
Don't leave the company because you're happy there. You just need a different boss. But bosses control everything. They control what you do, when you do it, where you do it, how you do it, what you're going to get paid, are you going to get bonuses, where you live. I mean, they can control lots and lots of stuff. Your emotional state too. So they can control all those things. And on the flip side of that, I know some people whose entire career strategy is to find the right boss and then follow her or him wherever they go.
So if they move.
If their boss moves, they move with their boss. Because they know that boss will create the right subculture for them, and the boss will create the right job for them, because they just love working for their boss. So the boss is the most important.
Wow.
So going back to our listener, you think about times, and I think that's a great pivot to that, Whitney. Think about times when you had a great boss that you loved working with. Start there. Start with your favorite bosses of all time and see if you can find where they're at and see if there's an opportunity.
So with the 3 components, I know you being Brandon Smith, the workplace therapist. If you're out there and you feel, okay, well, I have 2 components, but I'm missing the one. So let's say, okay, I love my boss. I love my job as in what I do, but I don't really have any coworkers I get along with. You have specific resources for each of those components.
I do. And
Okay.
this absolutely was not planned, but I absolutely do for this. And so I have 3 ebooks, all in the
Okay.
Workplace Happiness Formula. One is on right job, one is on right culture, and one is on right boss. And so if you go to my website, theworkplacetherapist.com, or
Okay.
just Google the Workplace Therapist, it'll take you there. Then you'll see those on the homepage where you can download those.
Okay.
And any of those, if either any or all of them, just to help you, and they're workbooks. So they're there to ask the right questions and kind of guide you as you're on this process of trying to find your version of workplace happiness, your version of context that's going to really allow you to be the rock star that you could be.
Okay. So if I'm content, but I'm not happy, I can go and find that component and learn more how to get the happiness part.
And the nice thing is I found that even people who are content but not happy, if they just do that simple back of the envelope, what about my job? What about the culture? What about my boss? It lights up the thing that's broken. And then you just download that particular resource and it might be able to help you move the needle on that.
That's great.
Absolutely.
Well, I think this has really helped. I hope it's really helped our listeners.
I hope it has too, because I know what it's like to feel that state of kind of paralysis. But the good news is this person knows the difference between thriving and not thriving, and they've thrived before. It's just how to find their way back.
Right.
Yeah.
Good. Well, real quick, if any of our other listeners, viewers have questions, how can they send those in to you?
Okay, so the best place to go is go to the Workplace Therapist, my site. And on the top, you'll see there's a link for Ask the Therapist, and they can click on that, and then it sends an email directly to me, only to me, and then you can type in any question you've got that I can take on the air, or I can take offline, so you can share however you would like that information to be used, and I'm happy to take on any questions that people have. And you're welcome to say, yeah, use it on the air, but don't use my name. Or you might say, hey, yeah, use it on the air and use my name, because I want to become famous. And you can do that too. I'm totally fine with promoting, which is great. So yeah, Whitney, this was awesome.
Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you. And thank you for listening and viewing. As always, we are here to serve you. So if you can think of any comments or questions to make our show better, please send them in. And join the movement to eliminate workplace dysfunction by listening to us every Tuesday at 9 a.m. where a new show comes on. And we will continue this fight. Until then, have an awesome, awesome week and an awesome, awesome life. I'm Brandon Smith, and I'm the Workplace Therapist. My entire purpose and passion in life is one singular thing, and that's to help you live a life free from dysfunction. And let's be honest, folks, dysfunction is everywhere. Our bosses, our coworkers, our neighbors, even that grumpy barista that pours your coffee. And sometimes, that dysfunction stares back at us in the face when we're getting ready in the mornings and we see ourselves in the mirror. Well, at the end of the day, life and work should not have to suck. The purpose of this show is to help you overcome those roadblocks in your life to help you realize the life you've always wanted.